I think that goes back to the amount of intelligence needed to know your gaps. If you're a single founder or a co-founder, half the battle is knowing where you're not elite and finding those people to be that complementary team.
You should probably always find time to ask, how are you crazy? And it's a really interesting question, because if somebody takes offense and goes, how do you mean crazy? I'm completely sane. Run away. There is no category of human crazier than those who are convinced of their own normality.
I think this is definitely going to have ripple effects for investors, angels through to VC, and the likely DD and data room implications going forward, like for founders, and the type of information that investors will want access to as part of that process, I think is going to change.
The fact that there's a highway to hell and only a stairway to heaven says a lot about the anticipated traffic numbers. It's Monday afternoon and it feels weird because we're recording an episode, but how are we all?
Things feel weird. I'm not back in time zone, I don't think, post-US. And here we are throwing it all out of sync with a Monday afternoon potty.
Keeping your boys on their toes.
Are you also playing the drums there, Aaron?
Sorry, could you hear that? I'll put the pen down.
As the humble editor of this podcast, could I ask you to pull your head in, please?
Yes, will do.
Ash, Jack, how are we? And to Aaron's birds, if you could fuck right off.
I just closed the window.
Oh, I'm in a state, aren't I? How are you, Ash?
I'm good. Yeah, excited. Gather on this weekend in Adelaide. That's AFL related for all of our non-AFL listeners, where everyone comes to Adelaide and sees how awesome we are, and they remember it for a hot second. Hopefully they spend lots of money on our economy, and hopefully lots of investors come for an event I'm going to on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So really excited for that. Hoping we get to meet some interesting people, get some new insights, and yeah, hopefully I get to meet them and they get my business card. So that's the goal of the week.
Sounds good.
Love it.
Jack, are you indulging in all of this AFL? AFL, yeah?
Yeah, Ash, I don't know if I've told you, but I've never been to an AFL game.
That's actually ridiculous.
I haven't either.
Ugh. I've at least been to all of the things. Rugby sevens, rugby union, rugby league.
I went to Hong Kong sevens once.
Yeah, and you remember maybe the first 10 minutes?
I remember putting on the Where's Wally outfit. It all went downhill from there.
Yeah.
I did go to an AFL game, but it was Gold Coast, so I don't think that counts.
Well, they're actually quite good now.
Oh, are they? Well, this was when they just kicked off.
Yeah, no.
Well, see, this is a good thing. The team's always finding out about each other. Are you still a bit jet lagged, Darren?
Yeah, I hit a point on Saturday afternoon.
So tired you can't even bother to have a shower and a shave.
I was joking before. I didn't realise how unshaven I was until I saw myself on the Zoom.
I feel like giving you $10 and telling you it's going to be okay.
I have managed to get some. My sleep is mostly back in cycle, which is good. But Saturday afternoon, I hit a wall of exhaustion. But I'm on the way up.
Age.
Yeah.
We haven't had a full chance to debrief, but I think the thing that has stuck with me is that trip was no longer about AI tools. I think that's boring now. Like, okay, everyone gets it. AI is going to make life easier, and agents have demonstrated that they're coming as her programming tools. That trip was about the wave of change in business models. Like, this rapid ability to deploy plus the agentic era is going to, I think, change fundamentally how SaaS and technology is actually delivered to customers.
I think compared to last time, the noticeable thing was how quickly the entire ecosystem has upskilled knowledge on AI. And what we heard 6 months ago, which was differentiated in its perspective, is now common knowledge across the industry, I'd say. Like, everyone's just taken that for granted, and it's played true. That's probably why it is common knowledge. Like, everything that was predicted 6 months ago has played out so far. I think what's interesting is the way they're talking about AGI being 18 months away, and that just seems accepted and like industry standard assumption.
But one of the conversations we had was that AGI for probabilistic things, but actually we still haven't solved. LLMs are a probability machine, a very good one, but actually there's still some things that the technology won't solve for, where you need absolute exactness every single time, and that you can't risk a problem or a hallucination or something where the probable outcome can actually be one of a few things. We haven't solved that yet. That was one of the things that I realized, that some people are probably putting it all in the bucket of everything solved, but actually we don't yet have a solution for that.
Yeah, that was a good conversation. And then building on what you said before, the shift in the AI lens being applied to product or product stacks or processes, to then businesses, business models. And then, as we were talking about in the little potty we recorded, like applying that then to an industry and starting to look at what are the consequences for entire industries. I think that was a bit of a step change from say 6 months ago.
And AGI is artificial general intelligence, just in case that's not out there as well.
Yeah. I don't think there was anything else that we didn't already cover in the last session, other than just for me, the difference, I think this time coming back to Australia, often I feel a little bit of a sadness coming home in seeing how far behind Australia is. But I think by virtue of the work that we get to do and the place we get to play in, I'm insanely excited on the back of this trip, but more so than ever. I think we're playing in the right spot.
Do you mean us as in tribe, or the general Australian startup ecosystem?
No, us as in tribe. I still think Australia we're not even on the playing field. We are just being left behind. But I think us as in tribe, I think that's the difference of why I feel so pumped on the back of this trip coming home, as opposed to over the last 12 years coming back and just thinking, fuck, how does Australia compete at all? I think it's just the excitement for what we're doing in particular. Well, a call I had about an hour ago with Phil, the founder of Gasbot, who was on the US trip with us. And his feedback on the trip was no one else in Australia that he knows of is doing what we do in terms of helping Australians enter these markets, but not just help them enter the market, but doing it in such a practical way with such deep insights and opening the doors and getting access to the right people for them.
And it's not just for our founders as well, Aaron, right? Most recently, we've also taken a number of investors, as we believe in making sure that the investor base that we have at Tribe is also upskilling and learning, and those who want to come on these missions have access even to the offsites as well.
Yeah, I think the combination of investors and founders is something that's well received on both sides. The investors get to see what good operators and great operators look like in market, but the founders also get to demystify and humanize the investor side of the table. But there's something just came to mind. There's a reel that John Cleese is in this reel where he's talking about the baseline intelligence required to know that you're stupid. And you have to have certain knowledge in order to be aware that you don't have all the knowledge. And that is essentially these trips. Like, you go to Silicon Valley, you get these new data points and you realize, holy fuck, there is all this knowledge. There is all this happening. We're over here in Australia in this bubble. And for any entrepreneur anywhere globally, you're head down in your business getting it done. You might know you obviously know your business intimately, you know your industry, you know your sector, but the opportunities to lift your line of sight above the horizon and see what else is coming are few and far between, unless you get on a plane and go somewhere like the mecca of tech. But that's it for me. Like, I need to find this John Cleese reel where he talks about it.
But maybe this is also a segue for one of the items that was in the schedule. There was a big conversation every now and then about co-founders versus sole founders, because there's differing views at the investor level, and there's differing views at the founder level, and there's differing views at the advisor level. And the two views are fairly stark. One is co-founders inevitably are too much of a pain in the ass. It inevitably is a fuck up. You should just do it by yourself. The other view is actually there's so many plates to spin in getting a business up and running. If you want to go far, you should go together. And it was just a conversation. Regular listeners will know the PAEI model that we've discussed a number of times. You've got to produce, you've got to administrate, you've got to entrepreneur, you've got to integrate. And for a single human to be able to do that on a given day is just a problem. But as a sole founder, you don't have to worry about some other dickhead. Is the thing. And this little video, I'll just play it now, which comes from Y Combinator, was just a bit of a conversation piece. So let me just hit share.
A bad co-founder is definitely worse than being solo, but the best possible world is like having someone who is alongside you, who is mega gets you. And when you're having the worst day, and everyone does, like ideally your co-founder is there to just pull you up, and like likewise, and you can go way farther for way longer and create way more awesome things with people who, hey, they're your people. Startups that work are so rare, you need it all. Like you need like every possible advantage you can get.
Yeah, going for no co-founder is just a limiting downside type optimization, and it's just like not the right way to think about startups. Yeah, to your point, like yes, you will have less stress in theory if you don't have a co-founder, but then yeah, the truly exceptional breakout companies have a really great, healthy co-founder relationship. Yeah, to say it's a variant of the like, why do people raise VC funding argument, where it's like, oh, you don't have to raise VC funding, like you could just like grow, you could grow like within your revenues, for example. It's like you totally could, but yeah, you have to play to win, and actually like the way to win is to attract all the resources. It's to like get the capital, to get the best people, to win the market and be dominant and take it all.
Yeah, if you don't play to win, someone else is going to play to win, and guess who's going to win?
Yeah.
I think Harj and I like texted this to each other once. It's if you don't want to have people problems, then you need to live on an island totally alone with no one.
This is the Renee Adler philosophy. It's basically just like all problems are actually like people problems and interpersonal problems, and that if you want to have no problems, then yeah, like go live alone on an island and you have like theoretically no problems. Yeah. But yeah, if you actually want to live any form of like fulfilling life, you need to be part of a society and a group of people, and you have to work through the problems and get good at dealing with them and get good at handling conflict and working with other people if you want to achieve anything.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and regular listeners will know that absolutely aligns, I guess, to our philosophy. And one of the things we just discussed on the mission was it's complementary teams. Now, we've invested in sole founders, but the question is, can those sole founders garner non-co-founder people to be on the journey? Because it can be a bit hard if you're just trying to use money to pay for people's. But yeah, it was a big topic, and there's a number of things that I like in what he described there.
Aaron, I think that goes back to just your point earlier around the amount of intelligence needed to know your gaps. If you're a single founder or a co-founder, half the battle is knowing where you're not elite and finding those people to be that complementary team. And I know that's something that in a number of the conversations, whether it's when we're assessing deal flow or we're getting ready to go to IC, that's a lot of the conversations that where I'm at the table, where I hear the three of you really debating that. And it's always, okay, well, where do we think that they may need to bring someone in the future, or do they understand where their strengths and weaknesses are? And I think that's like listening to that with the lens of how I hear the three of you talk all the time about our deals it was a light bulb for me.
Yeah, and like in my experience, the people that are on the co-founders are a problem, do it alone, are all the people that don't know how to work with a team and are just fucking nightmares. I don't want to oversimplify it. And the slight nuance is there's a lot of sole founders that I work with that actually wish they had a co-founder. They believe in co-foundership and they treat their stuff as the early stuff as co-founders. And it's just life didn't like deliver them the sliding door moments that often co-founders come at. But then there's the group of people that don't have a co-founder, don't want a co-founder, don't believe co-founders. I think it's the nuance there. Can a sole founder be successful? Absolutely. But it comes down to that concept of trust and respect. Do you know how to command it, and do you know how to grant it? Do you know how to command and grant trust and respect in the way you behave? That doesn't mean that sometimes you're not an irrational, exuberant, benevolent dictator, because that's the energy that gets things moving, right? And co-foundership works when you have people that are very aligned on vision, very aligned on values, very aligned on behaviors. And when you see these things melt and fall apart, there was a vision problem, there was a behaviors problem, there was a values problem. But if you're able to maintain those three, and you're able to command and grant trust and respect, and sometimes there are some hills to die on, sometimes they're not hills to die on, sometimes you need to access your empathy mode, as you guys often have to do with a certain individual on the team. I'm pointing at myself for those that are listening. When you're too rigid and you're a right fighter and everything's black and white, and like they don't work well in relationships.
There's so much there's so much in this topic, and self-awareness of not just to your point, actually, gaps and knowledge and skills and all those things, but even going deeper into the self-awareness of your own patterns of behavior and that awareness that two individuals in the exact same circumstance can have a completely different interpretation of what just happened. And so having that awareness that there is no absolute in your experience, it's subjective, and your interpretation of it is one thing, and being open, having that curiosity to actually be open to another idea, which doing all of that while the business is on fire, you have a burning imperative to get revenue and do everything else. That's the struggle. And this is why, Don, your lane of genius around helping founders with these frameworks to cross the street and chew gum, it's being able to do all of these things that are humanistic and messy and highly subjective, while also trying to navigate business and growth and change and everything else that's coming your way.
Yeah, I was pretty naive for a long time, especially considering that I came from more of a consulting world, working with others that like process and highlighting things as an issue was enough. But actually the core foundations are around values, behaviors, and vision. And you can't process your way out of it. Like, they're actually incompatible and there's nothing you can do. And the sooner you just get on with it, the better. Yeah. But the other pattern that I do see is that those that have a good support network outside that can give perspective, and third parties that can be called on, I think that is a pattern that helps with co-foundership. Yeah, but yeah, coming back to the trip, I can't remember where it started, but there was some comment on one of the panels. I think it was one of the investors. I think it was one of the very first sessions where the investor just flippantly went, we only invest in multi-founder teams, and that was that. And a few of the sole founders went, oh, so does that mean we've got no hope? But in Silicon Valley, it's a recognized pattern. Do you have anything else to add onto it? Because I got a bit of a segue when ready.
No.
Well, I guess the question is, do you have a co-founder bond that is strong enough to perpetuate alleged fraud?
Now I know what you're segueing to.
Yeah.
I'm not sure this level of fraud.
No.
Alleged.
Sorry. Alleged.
Ash, you seem uncomfortable with my segue.
Yeah, it's a spicy topic.
Yeah. So what we're talking, alleged, again, it's still in front of courts. We can only go by what's in the media and what's reported, but I can't remember when an investor, I don't know of a time where an investor has called the police on a portfolio company, and we're talking about StrongRoom AI. And in the Australian market, especially in the listed space, like when you look at MinRes or whatever it is, Chris, whatever, like, has actually been caught using company assets, and there's a whole ATO tax evasion thing. A lot of Australian investors, there is no high moral ground. It's just, well, can I still make money? And if so, I'm going to. Whereas here, this level of what's been described in court documents is so great, and we'll unpack it a bit, that EVP, the investor, felt no other option but to call the police.
It is interesting. I feel my gut with EVP, and I don't claim to know them well, but the way I do know them is they seem to have a certain set of values. And I think even if there was, like to your point before, like we've seen with different things over the years, if there's a great commercial outcome and the investors are making profits, they tend to allow certain indiscretions or things that the CEO or executive might have done to pass through the keeper with certain corrections. But this feels like, in this case, it seems like it's straight off the bat, no, we're calling the police in very quickly.
Yeah, I've been on a board for almost a decade, 2025, so maybe not 9 years, with Les Zeckley, one of the founders of EVP, the original, who's one of the greatest investors Australia's seen if you look at his exits. And having worked with him for that period of time, that is a gentleman that is very values driven, unbelievably supportive. The company that I'm on a board with, without Les's support and belief in the founder on founders, wouldn't be here. And if there was ever a company that was going to go down this path, this would be the company. But when you actually read what is alleged in the court documents, and what the court documents are saying is that effectively investment capital and loans was classified as revenue, and then worse than that is sold as ARR, and then money from a raise has found its way into different areas that wasn't supposed to. I did find it interesting that one of the investors and directors, I don't know if they were a director, but they were one of the early investors, came out very early screaming blue murder that this was very poor form on behalf of EVP. But when you read through the court documents, it felt a bit, you doth protest too much because some of the behaviors that are alleged. But what it really brought home for me is how trust driven this space is. And I think every venture firm has been thinking, oh, how do I ensure that this doesn't happen to us? And I've got some ideas to share, but it did highlight we are a trust-based game. And I think this is going to have ripple effects in the industry for a long time to come.
I totally agree. I've like, obviously we've been talking about this a fair bit and I've been thinking about it a lot, but it is a trust-based game. And when you start thinking through the steps you can take, having checks and balances and all those things like due diligence, what there is at the end of the day, this is a opaque industry. Like it's you are relying on certain information being disclosed. But I saw the same thing, Don, that the other investor who came out all guns are blazing against EVP, directly calling them a bad actor for bringing the police in. But with what's come to light in the alleged allegations, I'm really curious, did that investor just not know what was going on? Or is there something else afoot?
Well, from the article, it talks about that they had been sold a vision that it was cash flow positive, which if you take investor capital and loans and call it revenue and then capitalize a whole lot of expenses, it's a pretty easy accounting thing to do. They actually had an $800,000 a month cash burn. They had, what was it? There was a whole ATO thing going on. Like, it's just an absolute shit show. Now, one of the things that it did make me think of is, and what we're adopting out of the US, is the US is very, I would say US investors are very far ahead, especially in SaaS, on cohort analysis. I'm not saying that a fraud couldn't happen, but if you get an export of your true cohorts and when they signed up and you import them into a cohort analysis tool, it would be another level of fraud to actually try and fake like all sorts of other cohorts, because like the patterns in cohorts can be quite difficult. And so what would happen is there would be an import of revenues and customers, but a whole lot would be missing because it was one-off capital and it wouldn't be reoccurring. And the system would glitch. And at very least, there'd need to be a conversation. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't then go and like manufacture all of that, but that's another level altogether, which, at this level, when you read through what's happened here, in itself is fucking insane. The thing that I keep going through is that, because one of the articles talks about, like, they took 1.9 million of secondaries. Again, this is alleged. It hasn't been prosecuted in court, but if it's true, like, it wasn't just money for the company. They took money out of the company. Like, that like it's not just, oh, I'm going to do some things to keep my company alive. Like it's more than that. But again, I got to keep saying the word alleged because it's still before the courts.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to have ripple effects for investors, angels through to VC, and the likely DD and data room implications going forward, like for founders, and the type of information that investors will want access to as part of that process, I think is going to change. And you reminded me, Don, that the customer cohorts, I think that's a whole thing we should talk about sometime, not just in the context of this, but actually in helping founders to understand that and the value of that in terms of product iterations and ICP adjustments and marketing channel adjustments and all those things. So that was actually a really good session that would be really valuable to go through.
Yeah. I should tell listeners at home, Jack's internet has got so shit it's not working. Sorry, guys, Riverside crashed again, won't let me back in, so I'm turning Wi-Fi off. So we'll have to catch him at the next one. We're only technology investors, like we wouldn't know anything about this. But Ash, what are your thoughts?
I agree with everything you've said. I think it's a really unfortunate thing, and being in our position is hard where we're out there talking to investors, and so this is part of the conversation that we're having to continuously deal with at the moment, and to talk to investors, current as well as future prospective investors, about what we're doing and how we're thinking about it and how we're putting those checks and balances in place, and how we're just being open and transparent with not only each other but also the investors of this is what we're doing, here's how we're going about it. And I think for better or for worse, this will likely push another level of transparency through the system. So that may end up being positive in terms of helping investors get more comfortable with the asset class, if I'm trying to have the glass half full. But yeah, it's unfortunate, and it will definitely have ripple effects. And I just hope that sooner rather than later, this is able to move through the courts so that as a whole, the industry can try to unpack it and move forward collectively and figure out what the best next steps are.
That's a good point, Ash. I often think about this with just little choices we make in how we report things to investors. So we choose to be very transparent and very open. It's part of our culture. It's also part of our value system that Don and I insist on and brought in a bit of our own DNA. And it's interesting hearing back from investors who are invested in companies both through Tribe and through someone else, just hearing the completely different data set and the way things are reported, and we choose to err on sharing more than others would. And it's something it is a bit of a question, like, is that the smartest move? Is it? But I do genuinely believe it is. And I think in this case, it's interesting to reflect on. EVP had a choice when this came to light of pursue or not pursue, to let something disappear in the dark. And yes, it would end up an investment write-off more than likely, given what we believe about patterns of behavior. But few go through a fund's portfolio to question the unsuccessful, assuming they've had the outlier success, versus this is a very public, this will play out very publicly for a while yet. And going back to that comment before, Don, about EVP and their value system, like this is, I think you're right, Ash, like this is where trust gets built through moments like this of transparency. Obviously, we've got to see what plays out. And at the moment, these are all just allegations. But I do hope that this makes for a more transparent sector and more open and honest conversations and reporting about what's really going on. But look, let's see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, we'll see it. We'll see it play out. Well, let's talk about some good positive news rather than that. It was announced that IVYY, which is based on the Gold Coast, has been announced as one of G2's top 50 software companies in Australia and New Zealand. It says each year G2 recognises the best software companies based on real user reviews, and they're thrilled that they've come out at 43 of nearly 1,000. They're standing alongside people like Atlassian, Canva, and Xero. Now, I think why, like, A, well done to a Gold Coast company, but B, Lauren Hall, who's the founder and has agreed going to do one of our fireside chats down on the Gold Coast at Mick Dempsey's property, which we're just getting organised. And I don't know all of the story, and I look forward to us unpacking it with Lauren. But Lauren has been building a great company that is global without, from what I can see, a lot of fanfare, has just been executing and getting the job done. And I think it's great for local companies to get recognized in this manner.
Yeah, bloody awesome outcome. Like I love that it's a Gold Coast based company. It's great to see. Can we share that we'll be having an event? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, well,
Oh, you did. Oh, sorry. I did not hear that.
obviously if we can't, then
I did not hear that at all. I had the article on my screen. I must have been reading.
tell me your mail and you can't multitask without telling me your mail and you can't multitask.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's going to be in May. Hopefully, we're just locking things down, but I really look forward to unpacking the story and getting people. But when you look at the commenters on this announcement on LinkedIn, it's absolutely the who's who of the local business community. So yeah, I look forward to unpacking it. So yes, Aaron, is there anything you'd like to share about the event?
I'm sure you covered it when I wasn't listening.
Ash, anything from you?
Very excited to hear more about the story, and I think it's also going to be exciting to see. This has been a hard slog. She's been at this 15 years. It's not like it's an overnight success, and I think in the age we're currently in AI, I feel like there are a lot of people who are now thinking, oh, let me have a go at this entrepreneurship thing with AI. Everything's going to be quick and in and out, and I think this is just an example of sometimes it's a slog. Sometimes you don't make it out. And I think it's great to see a founder getting this recognition. And yeah, I can't wait to hear more of her story.
Absolutely. Now, the next bit in the schedule was actually supposed to be linked to the co-founders. I think standalone, it's a little bit weird, but how about I play it and then you can tell me whether I should edit it out. I just thought it was it's weird, but anyway, let me.
If you think it's weird, then.
Okay. There is a method to my madness, and then I'll tell you
Get stuck as to what to talk about on a first date. And at the School of Life, we recommend that toward the end of the evening, you should probably always find time to ask a partner, and how are you crazy? And it's a really interesting question, because if somebody takes offense and goes, how do you mean crazy? I'm completely sane. Run away. There is no category of human crazier than those who are convinced of their own normality. However, if they are able to say, make a first stab at sketching out for you the ways in which, they're this and that, that's a very good sign, because we don't need people to be perfect. It's fine for people to be imperfect, so long as they've got some sense of how they may be likely to ruin our lives.
The first question was great.
Everything was great.
But my thinking, here's my thinking as to where the relevance is, that actually it's like, what does he say? That there's nobody more crazy than the category of human that thinks that they're sane.
Yeah.
Oh, completely agree.
And the thing for me, it's more about when we're dealing with founders, we've actually built this into our process, although I don't think it's as explicit as it could be. But then when founders are looking at co-founders as well, but I think, as he says, we don't need people to be perfect, but self-aware and being able to articulate, I have this habit, or I can get a bit like this when I'm stressed, or this is some semblance of how I can create havoc for myself and others, I think is actually a really healthy thing to be able to have a conversation with. And if somebody gets all offended and rejects the premise and throws it back in your face, it's time to run.
Totally. I love it. We have a process that I implemented at one of the businesses that I've worked with, 11.2, and it's a user manual. So whenever someone starts in the business, there are a whole range of different questions, ranging from what does it look like when you're stressed? When you are struggling with something, what are the things that we should look for? And so it's all about helping us identify in those moments, if you are stressed, what is the best thing that a team member should do? Should they take you for a coffee? Leave you the fuck alone? What is it? And we have some of those questions, probably not as blunt as that, but I do think in a co-founder relationship, even just, I would take it further, and in hiring your first core team, like those who are going to be in your mind you think are the executives of this business that you're going to be building, all those key people. I would want to know that, because I would also not want their crazy to be too aligned with mine. Okay, a little bit of overlap, but you need to spread the crazy, and from my perspective.
Spread the crazy. It reminds me of Ash Barty's performance coach, Ben. Is it Ben Crow? He had this thing, what's your weird? And it's just owning your weirdness and your craziness. The second part of what he said, the more I think about it, it is like a post-mortem on the co-founder relationship, right? I like what you said, Ash. Like, how do you show up under stress, and like, if we know that of each other, and it does remind me of PAIE or DISC profiles where you can see your patterns of behavior under stress. But if you know that about each other, that definitely helps. But yeah, if we were to do a pre-mortem on how we would independently destroy the co-founder relationship, that would be an interesting little exercise.
But I think the only challenge is that it's not one of the things in psychology is that like you genuinely can't see yourself.
No.
Like that's become proved, right? And so the challenge for me, at least, it's not about them, even me or anyone being able to actually perfectly articulate, because it's not possible to actually see yourself. For me, is there an opening where a person does believe that there are some things, and at least be able to have the conversation.
I saw this psychologist ad, like a reel, and she was saying, my role is just to ask you questions because no one knows you better than you do. And I thought, no, that is the most untrue statement. And how can that possibly come from a psychologist of all people?
I do always recommend with the user manual, before anyone shares it with the team, they give it to their partner and they say, what am I missing? Because I was amazed by a couple of things when I gave mine to Tim. And he was like, no, that's how you think you display under stress. This is actually what you do.
Yes, there you go.
Those are the insights that my team in the past have gone, you're actually so much better now. And now I understand that if you're doing this, just don't talk to you for the next 3 hours. Yeah. If you're having those open and transparent conversations, not only with you and your co-founder, but your employees, I think that also brings a level of authenticity and transparency beyond that to the workforce. So it's something that I got brought to my attention maybe 4 years ago. And ever since, wherever I'm working, I'm like, this has to be put in place. It's so useful.
I really like it. I like the way you get the external perspectives, because that's...
Yeah.
But speaking of people knowing you, have you seen that thing of ask ChatGPT to make a picture of you based on what you know?
Oh, no.
Yeah. I did it.
I've asked ChatGPT, like, can you write my life story?
No. So I went, create an image based on what you know about me and turn it into a realistic photo.
Okay. This is scary. Yes, please. It's a compliment, Don.
Then I said, thank you. Please explain your reasoning. And he said, you're welcome. Here's the reasoning. 1, based on what I know about you, you're deeply involved in VC, startups, and advisory work. You're a host of thoughtful podcasts like Transparent VC and A World of Patterns. Now, I'm not of a world of patterns, but I had asked it once, is there anybody doing a podcast out there called A World Full of Patterns? Because that's really, like, if you look at everything we do, it's a world full of patterns.
It's a very dyslexic question to ask.
Yeah. Exploring both business and personal growth. Exploring, I'll leave a sentence out because it's probably best, but exploring, insert words, insert word, along with self-awareness and masculine and feminine energies, which I thought was interesting, connected to wellness, accountability, and conscious leadership. So I aim to reflect a personality that blends professionalism, depth, and you'll have a chuckle at this one, emotional intelligence. So 2, realism and mood. He said, I chose a realistic portrait style with soft lighting to create an approachable, grounded, and introspective vibe, which I believe you are. A subtle smile and direct eye contact signals confidence and openness. The background is minimal to keep the focus on your expression and presence, like a founder podcast host. Styling and clothing, a navy shirt was chosen to balance professionalism and calmness. Natural hair and glasses hint at an intellect and authenticity. consistent with someone who might be guiding startups and leading conversations on deep topics.
I love this.
I'm doing mine right now.
You're doing yours right now?
Yeah. No, mine's asked for details on me.
No, it doesn't. Mine just went straight into it.
Which model did you use?
I don't know. I just went to chat. Now, here's the thing. Would you guys be available to keep going and do the charts and the rest of the stuff tomorrow, Arvo? Because we've run out of it. I've got to jump.
Anytime. I'm easy. Whatever suits Ash and Jack.
Appreciate it. All right. So we're back. I'm not going to even bother with the movie magic, given we're all in different locations and different clothes. It's a day later.
Couldn't be my favorite part of the podcast.
Yeah, Ash has already been pretty supportive by cynically pointing out. How about I start off, Ash, with a relevant chart to us. For listeners home, this is a blue and a red chart side by side. The blue is how likely are you to recommend a Tribe Global Ventures mission, and the red is how likely are you to recommend Tribe Global Ventures. Stereotypical MPS. We're 9.8 on how much would you recommend, and we're 10 on that. So there you go.
That's pretty phenomenal.
That's as good as these charts are going to get, though, Ash.
Good work.
I love that the only thing better than a Tribe mission is Tribe itself. That's what that chart says to me.
Someone's given us a 9 in there, and I will find you.
Oh, I'm asking. We're following up.
I will catch you, and I will talk about what happened, what went wrong, what did I do? Was it something I said?
Can't believe we didn't get 100%.
Yeah, that's it. Now this section,
just because Jack and I went there, you were
No, that's actually a fair point.
So this chart section is part charts and then part just some memey kind of thing. So Ash, you're probably too young to know, but there was a thing called Scooby Doo, and there's a meme where it's one of them is pulling the hood. It's like, let's expose who this is. And so this is that Forbes under 30. And it's like, let's see who you really are. And you pull the head off and it's fraud. And I only bring this into this charts because obviously alleged. But the Forbes under 30, Linus Belus from LinkedIn had done a calculation. The Forbes under 30 have collectively raised more than $9 billion in funding over the last 4 years. At the same time, the Forbes under 30 have been arrested for frauds and scams worth over $18.5 billion. And all of the prior Forbes under 30 in the US includes, what was that guy?
SBF. What's his name?
Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried. We've got Elizabeth Holmes. We've got Sam Bankman-Fried's girlfriend. We've got Martin Shkreli. So my advice, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, is don't get yourself onto the Forbes 30 under 30 because... Like there was even an article I found, 30 under 30. It's an article in something. It's like, why so many Forbes young heroes face jail? And they went and analysed the people that ended up on these lists.
This is exactly why we haven't been on there, Don.
I'm just warning.
Jack's the only one there.
I was going to say, I think there's other reasons why Don and I aren't on there.
Now, this chart, so it's an X and Y axis on the bottom. And on the vertical axis, it's find out, so 0 to 10. And on the horizontal axis, it's fuck around. And so what the gentleman here is highlighting, if you fuck around, you're going to find out. And you'll find out if you fuck around.
I did see a good thing talking about the US at the moment. It's the era of fuck aroundery. And we're about to enter the era of find outery.
There you go. Okay, let's get a bit more serious for the business that we're in. So this chart for the people at home, this is in the US 2024 versus 2023. This was the changes in funding between 23 and 24 for different sectors. Hardware increased its funding from 23 to 24 by 64%. And I think we're part of that game as well. FinTech up 60%, SaaS up 47%, medical device at 12%. Gaming was down 27%. Education was down 20%. Crypto was down 17%. So, yeah, there were some big changes there between 23 and 24.
Yeah, interesting.
Like hardware has always been on the nose for a lot of people, but I think in this world of AI, having something physical, which has been our thesis, is gaining traction.
Yeah.
This next one, a reminder that venture-backed startups actually can take more than a decade to build. So what this is looking at is age of the company by round, the median for seed 1.1 years, the median for A 2.8, median for B 4.7, median for C 6.1, median for D 7.8, and then the exits. But when you have a look at, say, the Series D, whilst the median is 7.8, there's still like 40% or something that's like over
tail.
9 and 10 years, right?
Yeah.
But I take my hat off to the 1.6% of companies that within a year managed to do seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, and Series D. Like, who are these companies doing 5 rounds in 12 months?
They're probably on the Forbes 30 under 30 list.
Yeah, it's all right. We can't get to charts without talking about tariffs. And what this is showing is that we've done the mass tariff thing 3 times in American history, in 1828, 1930, and then now again 2025, all spaced 100 years apart, because anyone who remembers the last one needs to be dead for the next one to at least happen. I think that's probably right. Now, I thought I would just play this quickly. This is Ronald Reagan.
We can't see it or hear it if you're playing it.
Oh,
Yeah.
fuck
We can
hell.
Google it up.
I'm going to just splice this one in the interest of time. But what he's effectively saying is tariffs don't work because it creates a whole lot of disincentives. It stops investment in new technology and new product, and it inevitably leads to retaliation.
Yeah, the
And
action
then
has
what
a
happens
reaction.
is the pie shrinks.
My fellow Americans, for those of us who lived through the Great Depression, the memory of the suffering it caused is deep and searing. And today, many economic analysts and historians argue that high tariff legislation passed back in that period, called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff, greatly deepened the Depression and prevented economic recovery. You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group, who forget that more than 5 million American jobs are directly tied to the foreign export business, and additional millions are tied to imports. Well, I've never forgotten those jobs. And on trade issues, remember, America's jobs and growth are at stake. Until next week, thanks for listening, and God bless you.
It doesn't help that the tariffs aren't even about reciprocal tariffs. They're about trade deficits.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It just
Is just insane. And so this chart shows the tariff of the US going back to 1900. You can see we were at the 30% level for the US, then into the 20s, it dropped down. Then you can see where they raised the tariffs to try and combat the Great Depression, which only exacerbated it and made it an absolute disaster. Then you've had since 1940-ish, just this down to the right lowering of tariffs close to zero. And then now overnight, we've gone from 0 to an average of 25%. This is the bit that just makes me a little bit concerned, in that buy the dip, right? If you have a look at all of our charts going back 50 years, it's always been, don't worry about anything. Just keep buying because it always goes up. My only concern with that is that's in a certain world, a certain economic environment, a certain level of openness. If we are entering into a full-blown trade war environment where actually we're going to shrink GDP for everyone and become more insular, doesn't the world maybe end up being a bit different? So that, yeah.
Yes, but also you'll probably have to cut this, but surely.
Yes, I might edit that bit out.
Yeah, but surely. But
Surely there's
Action and reaction.
All right, good. It's good
John
to catch
knows what
Ash.
I learned.
It's good to catch Ash late in the day.
Can you bet on that on like sports bet? Is that
Yeah, happy
I
moon.
think you actually can.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Could this? Yeah.
Here is a chart of the stock market from the inauguration of Biden, Obama, and now Trump. And both Biden and Obama, the stock market went up. And have a look at Trump. It's so, because have you seen that video going around just reminding everyone of him going, we're going to win so bad, you're going to get tired of winning. Well, this is his version of winning. It's not just the US, though. Donald has brought down his Japan, Canada, United Kingdom. The only people that aren't down at the time of this was last week, is China. But I think since then, they're well and truly down. What's interesting, so for those at home, this lists all of the sectors in the US: consumer discretionary, financial, health, technology, consumer staples, industrial, materials, energy, utilities, real estate, communications. I've been playing in the markets for the better part of 20 years. And during these pullbacks, what tends to happen is your consumer staples and your utilities and healthcare tends to be green on red days, like, because there's a flight to safety. The fact that on the 1 day, the month, and the quarter, everyone is down, like, that is concerning, because essentially the market is saying that we are going to shrink the entire pie for everyone. Now, consumer staples is, say, down 4%. And energy's down 15%. Now, when energy shits the bed by 15%, the market's saying that we are expecting a recession. But the fact that there's been nowhere to hide for anyone, that's unprecedented. Here's the chart for those at home. Gold's up the top. So it has been performing as that sort of real asset hedge. Then down the bottom is oil. That's the white. And you can see that's just dying. And then other commodities have all bitten the dust.
What's the purple, Don?
Is aluminium. So forecasting that we ain't going to be building as much stuff.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of different parts of the market. Now, this is part of the credit market. So this is looking at the leveraged loan index, which is often a bit of a bellwether, and it's managed to go from nearly 98 down to 95. That doesn't sound like a lot, but in bond terms, that is a big drop. And there's just been big gaps on those days. Now, what we saw is coming into 22, it got killed, but then the Trump's coming back and everything's wonderful sort of thing. Yeah, it caught a bid, but it has dropped significantly. And if you look at yields, the 2-year yield has been creeping up, so it is forecasting inflation. But when you look at the 10-year and the 30-year, it has significantly dropped, which is all around forecasting much lower growth, much lower GDP in the future. And when you then have a look at volatility, when you look at the VIX, but it's not just the VIX, let me zoom in this a little bit, like volatility across a range of like Forex, or even across gold, the NASDAQ, like all vols are up. Now, that tends to happen. Now, this is a chart of the 10-year BB corporate spread, which is where a lot of corporates live. And when you have a look it bottomed in January. It's like, yay, Trump's here, he's going to be wonderful. Again, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's gone from like 0.85 to nearly 1.3. So on a percentage basis point of view, we're up almost 50% in a few months. And it's never the absolute value that's the ultimate problem, it's the rate of change. And so suddenly corporates are going to be spending a shitload more on their effectively interest repayments, and we've started to see a bit of a spike in the bond volatility. That's the MOVE index. So these are the things I always track, because the markets often have pullbacks, but if vol and bond volatility and spreads and whatever else aren't moving, that tends to mean that there isn't like this underlying regime shift. But what's got me a bit concerned is we're actually seeing all of these things starting to march together, and when everything goes down and the correlations go to 1, and bond volatility and the spreads start to blow out, that's where you get problems. This is a chart that somebody had put together. If the Great Depression was to start tomorrow and the same thing played out, a reminder, it would take 6,238 trading days to get back to the previous high. That's 25 years.
Yeah, wow.
Now, this chart here, for listeners at home, this is the S&P 500 PE ratio. The dot-com bubble, it hit close to 25. The COVID bubble hit, like 23? Then we had our 2022, 2023 pullback, where it's bottomed down at 15. But it's back up it was until the last 2 trading sessions at 22. Where it's at the moment is it's dropped, I think it's down at about 20. But this next chart is on the last 10 effectively stock market crashes, which is more than 20%, what the forward PE bottom was. And the bear market of 22 bottomed at 15. The COVID crash bottomed at 13. The rate shock of 2018 was 12. The GFC bottomed at 9.
9.
So we're still at 20 at the moment. And so historically, it's still got a bit to run. But you've got to be very careful trying to time the market, because this chart is going back to every bear market going back to 1950. And from the point of the market bottoming, what was the return over the next 12 months? The lowest return in 22 is 23%, but there have been bounces of 70, 77, 60, 45. But here's the problem, right? Timing the bottom is almost like it is dead set bloody impossible, because there's so much negativity and the world's caving in. People who try and get out only to time it. By the time you've waited, hang on, we're out of the bottom. Yeah. Often you've lost a whole lot of the gains. So, yeah, when you have a look at this chart going back to 1940, if you get out of the market with the hope to buy back in, and you were to buy back 12 months after it's bottomed, you've given back, you've lost somewhere between 30 and 70%. That's why this idea of bottom fishing is a little bit of a folly. Since Trump came to power, here is Elon, Jeff, Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Buffett, Larry Ellison. This is their loss in net worth. Elon's is the biggest loss, poor fuck, down 130 billion. Jeff Bezos has lost 45, Zuckerberg 28. Larry Page down 34. The only person who's up is Warren Buffett, up 12 billion.
I love that.
So all these people that supported Trump and have now realized that they've let a lunatic in. Some of the hedge fund bros on Twitter who are having a cry, who all supported and got Trump into power and now are crying about his policies. Trump, if you go back and have a look what Trump was saying 30 years ago, it's exactly the same. He's just doing what he said he was always going to do. And so just a reminder with Warren, and we had this chart before, he's sitting on a cash pile of $340 billion that he started to create effectively in 2023. So he has been prepping for this. And so this little video here that I found...
he's up 12 billion at personal wealth, and he hasn't even deployed all that cash that's just sitting there waiting for this moment.
So this is Warren. He was being interviewed. For some reason, someone has taken the chart of the market shitting itself and reminding people that he's sitting on 340 billion.
I've lived a life of small and traveled age, and every and more, much more than this. I did it my way.
If I was sitting on $340 billion worth of cash, I'd probably go on and start playing the ukulele and did it my way.
What are you talking about? You would do it with no cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true. The US is going through this shit, not really in a position of strength. So this chart for people at home is the jobless claims. And you can see there's going back to 1960s. There's a fair regularity, but once it starts to turn up, you tend to have your recession and things start to get exacerbated. Like even the delinquency of multi-family housing, so that's where you've bought into an apartment block, the delinquency rate is about to go past that of what was after the GFC. This is the chart of Freddie Mac. They're a big lender over in the US. This is their serious delinquency rate that is now past the GFC rate of 2008, 2009. Auto loan delinquency, it isn't quite at the level of the GFC, but have a look at that rate of change that since 2023 has just been shooting up to the right and exceeds that. And here's the Google results for recession. It is on people's minds. It is shooting up and to the right. Often what happens is you've already got these underlying issues happening. Then someone goes and does something, and you can never forecast the something. And then it, like a body in motion tends to stay in motion, and it like shit that's wrong. But it also turns out that alcohol consumption in the US during these times is actually like venture in that it's a power law. The 10% of alcohol drinkers in the US consume 74 drinks a week. And so the chart that I've got at the moment, the top 10% consume 90% of the alcohol. Then the ninth is like 15 drinks, 8. And then all the way down, 30% of the population don't drink. And that's a bit like the power law of venture, like 30% of our investments are probably going to zero. Then you'll get a bit of money back on a couple. Then you'll do pretty well. And there's the one alcoholic company that delivers you all your returns.
It also says like a stiff drink. Is this only considering liquor?
Yeah, that's a good question. So
That's
difficult times in the US. This is the only Australian one for today, or there's a couple, but cumulative construction insolvency appointments, appointing administrators to builders in this country, is up 25% on the same time as last year. And given how much construction and building and whatever else drives this economy, and when you have a look at the price index of our materials, so this, for people at home, this is a chart going back to 1968. Just have a look at that COVID jump, and we wonder why people are in trouble and properties through the roof. So that's why I'm a little bit nervous. Now, with all of this going on, this is just a little picture that I found, that when fishermen cannot go to sea, they repair their nets. And with all of this shit going on and a whole lot of things happening, sometimes you've got to accept it is what it is, and you've got to go internally a little bit and get your house in order.
Yeah.
The good thing is, with everything that's going on, perfect time to launch a fund in a long duration asset. But the universe is just questioning whether we really want it. And the good news is we do.
If you think, and we do a correlation to those times of recession and great market disruption, the number
100%.
of unicorn companies that come out of those periods.
Exactly.
We are really, hopefully, geniuses in the making.
We have picked it like a dirty nose.
Yes.
Let's eat the thesis.
Yeah, I agree with you. This brought a smile to me. Being an adult is always just saying, but after this week, things should slow down a bit. And saying that over and over for the rest of your life. That is me. Like, I look at my calendar and next week is going to be a bigger week. And then somehow Thursday, Friday, everything fills up again.
Yeah, don't shatter my reality.
You won't know this song, Ash, but there's a song, I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty. Whereas I may readjust my stance if you have a convincing argument. That's not Tom Petty, that's Tom Reasonable. You get it, Aaron.
I just love that this made it in the charts for some reason.
Tom Reasonable rather than Tom Petty. I'm trying to be in my life Tom Reasonable and not Tom Petty. It just... Okay, and the last one. The fact that there's a highway to hell and only a stairway to heaven says a lot about the anticipated traffic numbers.
That is gold.
Yeah.
That is gold.
So I hope... Yeah. So for me, the summary of that chart stuff, those things that I track, is it's not so much to try and be fearful or whatever else. It's just to understand what is. And if corporate spreads and bond vol and and underlying market structure starts to change, it's not about freaking out. It's just about understanding where you are at this point in time and matching things accordingly. That's all.
That was much more charts than charts this week.
No, that was really good.
Much
really
more
good.
enjoyable.
Well, having 2 weeks traveling in the US means that I could spend a bit of time actually trying to find good stuff. What are we looking forward to?
Invest SA of a couple of days of investor events here in Adelaide around Gather Round. So excited to kick that off tomorrow night. And yeah, then back-to-back weekends jam-packed, really full of sport, Easter, Anzac Day. I feel like the rest of the month it's going to fly.
There's a lot on. I've got the kids home for the school holidays, so it's nice. I quite enjoy the school holidays, especially post-US trip, but starting more UK calls. So actually in 2 minutes, I've got to catch up with Elizabeth Farley, but yeah, feeling pumped to catch up with the UK crew.
Yeah. No, it's awesome.
What about you, Don?
I'm looking forward to finding out why I can hear World War III in my house at the moment with everybody seemingly screaming at each other. So that's going to be good news. So that's where I'm at in the school holidays. But they went to Movie World today, so I suggested there's going to be some overtiredness, mostly from their mother.
Yeah. Oh, understandably.
Yeah. No, I've got a few things that I've got to catch up on. Oh, and Vu, if you're listening, love you. We're going to have to change the process of allowing me to look after the marketing automation. Teams was missing an apostrophe in my last automated post.
But
so
I haven't even looked at what's going out on my LinkedIn right now, so maybe I should just check.
So I think because that's like the third time I will have to have pulled something down. So I think we need to have a review.
Or you could just embrace it. You're neurospicy. It's fine.
Well, what I try and explain to people is I need to demonstrate that it's not AI and that it is me.
That was a legitimate marketing tactic we talked about in one of the podcasts, like having human errors in there so that they don't know that we've just automated 6 months worth of content.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go. You jump on your call with Elizabeth. Send
let us know how it goes.
her our regards.
Will do.
And we'll catch you later.
All right. See you, team.
Yeah.